This semester?
Hi, hello. We're going to go ahead and get started. This is the last session for the No Islands in the Stream program stream, so we're really excited to have had a really great, wonderful day of presentations and presenters, and thankfully are thankful to AMIA for letting us present on all of these great topics today. I'm Laura Treat. I'm the Moving Image Preservation Librarian at the University of North Texas. And today we're going to talk about what's use got to do with it, developing a scholarly user base for regional AV archives. So the inspiration for this presentation has really come from conversations with colleagues that have been ongoing, committee meetings, my own personal research that really says our primary users are not scholars. They are not being used primarily for scholarly research, and particularly outside of the areas of media and communication studies. And also, all of these conversations and this research suggests that we actually need to be soliciting this user group in order to prove the value of our collections to our institutions as well as external funding agencies. And that's really been driven home today after a couple discussions during one of our previous panels about sustainable funding for local television collections. So today we have three presenters who are going to be talking about innovative ways that they are actively working to engage with a scholarly user base. So we're going to begin with Davis Kaufman from the American Archives of Public Broadcasting and Mary Miller from the University of Georgia, and then concluding with Johan Oomen from the Netherlands Institute of Sound and Vision. We have about 15 minutes each for each panel, and then we'll hopefully have some time for Q&A afterwards. So we'll go ahead and start with Casey.
Thank you, Laura, for organizing this panel, and hello to everyone online. Welcome to the session. If anyone has questions, is anyone going to be following the hashtag so that we can answer questions from the online audience? Cool. All right. Start my timer. Hello, everyone. I'm Davis Kaufman. I am from WGBH and the American Archive of Public Broadcasting. Oh, I don't have my slides up. Let's see. And I'm going to be talking to you about how we are engaging scholars as well as other allies in engaging and using our collection. Great. Yeah, so today I'm going to talk about collaboration and share some examples of the types of organizations and individuals that we've collaborated with at WGBH and the American Archive of Public Broadcasting. And I know this session is really focused on collaboration with scholars, so I'm going to talk about that and different types of scholars that we've worked with, but also take it a bit further and mention some other organizations and individuals we've worked with whom you might be able to connect with in your own community and think about how they are relevant to your work and how they can help enrich the work that you're doing and providing access and use of your collections. So the American Archive of Public Broadcasting is a collaboration between the Library of Congress and WGBH. We've been around since 2013 when we were instituted by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, who saw a need to preserve and make accessible as much as possible the archives and legacy of public media institutions from across the country. So since 2013, WGBH and the Library of Congress have been coordinating a national effort to preserve at-risk public media before it is lost. We know we're in a race against time, and to provide a centralized web portal for access to the unique programming that we have been creating within the public media community over the past 70+ years. Our mission is very broad. We want to be a focal point for discoverability of historic public media content. We're coordinating a national effort to preserve this material, so active digitization. We're providing content creators with standards and best practices, guidance and training for processing and preserving their own material, understanding that we're not going to be able to preserve everything on our own, and for raising funds in order to do that. We're disseminating content widely by facilitating the use of archival public media, which is what I'm going to talk about today, and increasing the awareness and significance of public media as a primary source for research, for education, for lifelong learning, and as we are all doing within our own institutions, trying to ensure the perpetuation of what we're doing through financial sustainability. So to date, we have digitized more than 50,000 hours of public media material from across the country, contributed by over 120 content creators. We have made available online more than 35,000 of these programs, and the entire collection, which currently consists of about 90,000 programs, is available on location at WGBH in the Library of Congress, and also through what we call our limited research access, where scholars can contact us and we can provide copies, or not copies actually, but a streaming file for them to access for a couple of weeks for their research. So back in grad school, one of my professors always said, get to know your fire department when you become an archivist. If a disaster happens in your community, you want your fire department to know the value of materials preserved in your archive, and you want them to think of you during their first response. So I'm taking this suggestion a little bit further. Get to know everyone in your community and your organization who might be able to help you achieve your mission. At first, it might not be obvious who those types of people you might want to connect with are. For example, I never thought that an aspiring group of engineers would help us pull off one of the most successful outreach campaigns at GBH. More about that in a little while, but if you think creatively and consider the expertise around you, you can make those connections, get those people excited about the archive that you manage, and go farther than you ever would alone. So why collaborate? Because of a shared responsibility, to share expertise and perspective, to pool your financial and human resources, to speed up solutions, to increase your funding opportunities, to gain greater credibility, to answer research questions. And everyone likes new friends. Collaborations, while they will enrich you, they might also drive you crazy, but they do enrich the work that you do when you do it right. So the benefits of collaboration: it challenges people to think, articulate, and receive clarity about their competencies. It serves as a mirror and helps you give a glimpse of yourself, of your strengths and your weaknesses. And when you pool your talent, you create a talent pool that is vast and more competent, able, and experienced. When you collaborate, you really become a learning organization. Essentially, you're teaching new things to each other, and you're continuing to learn as an individual, but also within your archive. So you may have read this 2008 report from OCLC titled Beyond the Silos of the Lands, Collaboration Among Libraries, Archives, and Museums. In this report that was published, this is a figure that was in that report. It's called the Collaboration Continuum. So as libraries, archives, and museums move from left to right on the continuum, the collaborative endeavor becomes more complex, the investments of effort become more significant, and the risks increase accordingly. However, the rewards also become greater, moving from singular one-off projects to programs that can transform services and functions of an organization. So the continuing begins with contact and then advances to cooperation, coordination, collaboration, and then finally convergence. And I love that word. The continuum has really been helpful to me in thinking about how we can build really collaborative programs at WGBH and the American Archive of Public Broadcasting that can transform our work and the work of the people that we're working with. So I'm going to start internally. We consist of a team of administrators, project managers, archivists, developers, analysts, business managers, and marketing and outreach staff. We all come from different backgrounds and value each other's expertise. And the success of our team is really owed to our director, Karen Cariani, who demonstrates collaborative behavior within our team and externally at every level. We interact with each other in a really open, communicative environment. We recognize each other's strengths and find ways to learn from each other and continue our professional growth through each other. We also are collaborating, as I said, with the Library of Congress. The Library of Congress is responsible for preservation. WGBH is responsible for access to the collection, but we have a lot of shared responsibilities, and it requires patience with each other. It requires understanding the strengths and weaknesses of each organization. And it's been a really wonderful growing opportunity for all of us, and we know we couldn't do it alone. We also considered the AAP be a collaboration not only between the Library of Congress and WGBH, but also with all of the organizations that are contributing to the initiative from all across the country. Because as an individual organization, you have the decision to make about whether you're going to work with another organization to provide your content to a different aggregator. That's what we're doing. We're aggregating content. And by being a central hub, sometimes there might be a bottleneck, but also through participating in a national effort, you're also providing, our participating organizations are understanding that they're providing content, making it more discoverable to a national audience, and opening up new opportunities, even funding opportunities. We also set up advisory committees, including a scholar advisory committee, education advisory committee, and stations and producers advisory committee. It does take some staff time to coordinate all of these groups, but each group has a set of co-chairs that who help us move our action items along. We recognize that we don't always have all the answers to questions, and having guidance from experts in these primary fields for which we're aiming our outreach and our it has been incredibly helpful to us. The committees are people that we turn to on a regular basis, people who have subject expertise, who know the needs that we're trying to meet as we're reaching out to scholars and educators and our content providers. They review our conference proposals, they serve our panel presentations with us, they help us make new connections that we wouldn't have been able to envision on our own. We're working with scholars through the curation of digital exhibits. I see this as really mutually beneficial. The scholars have an outlet to publish on their subject expertise to a greater public audience, and they also gain new skills in doing so. So as we're working with scholars, we provide them with training on GitHub, because that's where we manage our exhibits. We provide training on Markdown and HTML, so they're gaining skills that they can use in future projects, while we are gaining the expertise that they can provide through their subject expertise. We've also engaged with digital humanities scholars. So one of our pilot efforts was with the University of Texas at Austin's HIPSTAS program. You might be familiar with Tanya Clement's work, where her group analyzed content from our collection to create speaker labels. We're still in the process of figuring out how best to continue this work. We know it's very time consuming on machine learning, and it's something that we're not experts at. But as a result of this work, we have recognized that there are opportunities to continue working with digital humanities scholars in other domains. So we've created some policies that are enabling us to work with scholars in a really streamlined way. One example is our transcripts research access. So we've created transcripts of everything in our collection, and we can now provide scholars with credentials to our API to obtain copies of our transcripts to use in digital humanities projects to explore trends over time and over space. We have another policy called MADRA. Well, it was actually MOD until yesterday, and then I was like, MADRA, that is a really nice, that's a really nice acronym. I really like the sound of that. So scholars agree to a rules of use. They pay a small processing fee and a small storage fee, and they're able to obtain copies of our low resolution proxy files for non-consumptive research purposes. And in return, we ask the scholars to provide us with any metadata they create through their research, and then they consult with us on how to make use of that data to improve access to our collection. So they're getting a data set, and we're getting metadata to improve access. We're also piloting efforts with media studies scholars, namely Dartmouth College's Media Ecology Project. They've created a platform using MediaThread and Scalar, and they're creating a new tool called the Semantic Annotation Tool, where we have provided streaming access to our media files through their server, and their students and researchers are able to create time-based annotations, which they then will be providing back to us to also new metadata to improve access to our collection. We're also working with computational linguistics scholars. You might have attended James's presentation yesterday on CLAMS, and I think this is the right, it's computational linguistics for archival materials. Is that right? Okay. So we're providing them with transcripts and media as a data set. Computational linguists need data. They need content to analyze. And through their work, they are creating forced alignment of transcripts that don't yet have timestamps, scene identification, language recognition, speech to text, image recognition, named entity recognition, OCR, text on screen, and these are all things that, again, new metadata, and it's going to be amazing. I'm so excited about it, and yesterday I wanted to just jump up and down after James' presentation. And it's a platform that's going to, the prototype's going to launch next year, so this is an open source tool that will be available for use by the entire community. So very excited about that, and if you want to talk more with James and Kelly, his a Brandeis student who's here. They're here and available to talk with you about it. Going back to the engineering schools, we recently collaborated with a group of engineering students to create what we call the Archives Over the Air exhibit. They had a chance to access our local television content, to learn about analog broadcast technology, and we worked with them to create a vintage living room exhibit featuring a low signal broadcast, like 15 feet of a broadcast at the WGBH alumni reunion, showcasing content across different themes on 3 analog televisions, and it was a lot of fun, and we're thinking about how we can bring that to another location in Boston pretty soon. Okay, going beyond scholars, public and academic librarians, this is how you can get your content made more aware by a much greater audience. We have recently exhibited at the Public Library Association conference. As an archivist, you might not think, I'm not someone to be an exhibitor at a conference. Well, this is a really great opportunity. Exhibiting at like Public Library Association conference or the ACRL conference. These are opportunities that you can share your collection with academic and public libraries that might not otherwise have ever known about your collection. We also created a library communications toolkit, which we've made available on our website to provide librarians with information about how to embed our media on their website, boilerplate language, information about how they can create a LibGuide to incorporate into their curriculum planning, information about our exhibits and special collections. So that's another idea that you could do, is create a toolkit for how librarians can make use of your content and share it with their constituencies. Okay, also we've been collaborating with legal counsel and the Berkman Klein Center at Harvard Law School. So get your legal counsel excited about your collection. And to do that, what we've done is we've set up meetings with them every other week to talk about issues that we're facing. We bring content to these meetings and we're like, this is what we want to make available. This is how we want to make it available. And another suggestion is to draft things for them. Draft the policy, draft a contract, get it in front of their faces, let them redline it. It'll get done a lot faster that way. We've also benefited from our partnership with the Library of Congress, where WGBH benefits from a collaboration with the nation's public library, with the Library of Congress benefits from copyright law exemptions for public broadcasters. So think about how you can build collaborative projects with organizations that might have that might be able to share in certain provisions with you, like public broadcasters. Did you know that public broadcasters can distribute sound recordings online? And we have that exemption in the copyright law, section 114. Okay, with LIS programs, we've collaborated with Simmons University's GSLIS, Graduate School of Library and Information Science program, to conduct usability tests of all of the websites that we manage. So this is another opportunity. If there's a local LIS program that's focusing on usability and user experience, that's a way that you can get really good feedback on your website. We also have some of our public broadcasting preservation fellows in the audience. We've been working with other LIS programs to kind of build audiovisual preservation into their curriculum while they are providing some of their amazing students through a paid fellowship, and then we're partnering with a local public television station or public radio station to actually get some of their content digitized and preserved in the AAPP. So think about how you can build partnerships with local small community institutions that need things preserved from their collections. Think about how you can collaborate with your local LIS program. With digitization service providers, thank you, George Blood, there he is in the back. We consider all of our digitization service providers collaborators on all of our projects, but this year in particular, George Blood launched the Transcribe to Digitize Challenge, where George is providing free digitization services for public media stations that are able to correct an equivalent number of transcripts in our crowdsourcing platforms. We benefit by receiving digitized copies into the archive. The station benefits through the community engagement opportunities this offers for them, and the preservation, obviously. And George benefits from the promotional opportunities and recognition that he receives by providing this wonderful initiative. With lifelong learners, we're just beginning a collaboration with local senior center to provide programming to their lifelong learners. We're going to be giving presentations and letting them screen some of the content from our collection, while they will be using our crowdsourcing platform to correct transcripts They'll get to do it at the Senior Center as an activity and also go home and do it at home. So this is a screenshot of Fix It Plus, which is our transcript editing platform. I can talk about that with you later too. Marketing, we've built excitement within our marketing team. They're helping us promote content on social media, teaching us about marketing and how best to target different audiences, which I've kind of been talking about today. With our events team, we've starting up a local screening program where we are screening some of our content from our archive, and we're benefiting from from our events team who's able to promote these to our local community. Technical development partners, think about how you can build collaboratively with other organizations that have expertise. We're working with AVP and Indiana University to build shared open source code that you all will have access to use. We're going to be launching a new metadata management system through the Samvera open source community next March, so stay tuned for that. But think about how you can share resources in open source development as well. So a lot of this we're able to accomplish because we have a dedicated staff focusing on outreach and engagement. I know not all organizations are able to do that, but preservation is three-pronged, or archiving is three-pronged: identify, preserve, access. Access is really important. You don't want that to let that fall to the wayside in your organization. Think about how you can dedicate some of your resources to focus on outreach and use and engagement. So all these things I've been talking about are collaboration, and what I really want to see in our community is more moving toward the right, moving towards convergence, how we can work with other allied disciplines to transform our work, transform their work, and kind of see our missions merge, like with computational linguists and with digital humanities scholars and with all of these other types of constituencies I've been talking about. Also, since my boss is a beekeeper, I had to have a slide for bees. So one of the few things I remember from science class in high school and junior high is the concept of symbiosis, a mutualistic relationship when two organizations or two organisms of different species work together, each benefiting from that relationship. So bees and flowers are like an example of mutual symbiosis, and I think we should be more like bees and flowers.
What about colony collapse?
Yeah, well, I can go on. I can talk with you about climate change after this and loss of species. Okay, last slide. So it's important to find goals, share common goals. Recognize also this. I haven't talked about this, but recognize what is in and what is out of scope at your organization. Plan projects with ample time to accomplish them because we're all working on a lot of different things. Respect each other and appreciate each other's expertise and talent. Appreciate differences and learn from them. Know that failure happens and that's okay. It's always going to be a learning process. And document. Always document your work, especially if you're working with a different type of discipline. When you're working cross-disciplinary, you want to document in understandable terms that everyone's going to understand 5 years from now. Patience, look people in the eye, leave your ego at home, and that's something that Karen has taught us, and compromise. And then for the corny finale, leave your ego at the door, look people in the eye, be very patient, and raise a glass to your new partnership. Thanks, Casey. I know you're trying to cover a lot in a small period of time that we gave you.
Okay, hi everybody. I'm Mary Miller from the University of Georgia. I was just really almost distraught when I saw this time slot because I thought everyone will be at the bar by then. So thank you for holding off on your drinking or getting your drink before this, whichever you did, or if you brought it down, that's fine too. So I really hope that I'll make it worth your while. I want to really give something to everybody that you can take back and use. A lot of times I go to sessions and I think, well, that's great for you, but how am I going to do that? So there are really two parts to the talk. Finding and attracting researchers and then working with them once you have them. So as I was putting all of this together and thinking about our thoughts and what we had done, it started to sound more and more like relationship advice and dating advice. And I thought, why reinvent the wheel? So I found some really, I think, and honestly, if you're not at the bar, right now you might need to visit this website and find these guys. I'm pretty shy. It's hard for me to meet people at AMIA. But actually some of the advice and the next 7 steps here are all from this website. Really, I think applies when you're trying to find and attract scholars too. So number 1, Meetup. You might not find a scholar on Meetup, but that's a place to find people you have stuff in common with. So think about the collections you have, and then look for scholars that are interested in the same topics that your collections represent. Go to night school, I would say go to any school, you know, go where the scholars are. Volunteering is a great way to get out in the community and get information known about your collections. One thing that we do at UGA Special Collections is host a party for new history grad students every year. So I'll talk a little bit more about the 3 special collections at UGA and how we work together, but the 3 of us have pizza and beer and bring all the new history graduate students over, or talk with them about what we have, meet with them, try to figure out if we can support their research or point them to places they can if we can't. You know, if you do have pets, maybe that will attract a scholar, but I'm interpreting this as do something fun to get people's attention. So hosting screenings, hosting things in your communities, doing things that raise your profile and letting people know about the kinds of materials that you have. And the last 3, I think I don't really need to translate them into scholar dating. I mean, social media is a way to promote your collections. Your friends and your scholar friends, you know, someone is using your archive, encourage them to, you know, to share the fact that you exist, that your material is there, to talk with other scholars in their community of practice about how they found and use your material. And then, you know, step outside. Whatever your comfort zone is, you're going to have to step outside of it. They're not necessarily going to be coming to you. You need to be going out and finding them. But you should really be intentional about this and think about what you are ready for. Casey talked a little bit about the importance of planning, and you don't want to plan, you don't want to attract more scholars than you can accommodate. So at the University of Georgia and Brown Media Archives, we have very diverse collections, and our finding aids, our ability to find things, are all over the map. This is sort of our less successful finding aid. These are index cards. Well, at least they exist. We do have collections that don't even have this, but this is from WTOC in Savannah, and their cameramen or women filled out these index cards for each shot that they have. We don't have, I think maybe 1 drawer or 2 drawers of these cards have been transcribed, and that's it. I am not going to be promoting this collection because I don't want to have to go through these file drawers or have people sit in the reading room with people who are going through these file drawers looking for footage. If somebody comes to me and wants Savannah, I will work with them, but that's not something we're going to push now. On the other hand, our WSB news film is pretty well cataloged. You can see that we've got nice faceted searching. A lot of it is already digitized. Nobody has to come to the University of Georgia. All of you can go back to your rooms. If you haven't followed the meeting, friends advice, you can go back to your rooms with your laptops and search our collections from here and watch the footage from here. So that collection, yes, I am going to push out because it will require very little additional work on our part to make it user-friendly for scholars. And another thing that you want to think about, and I touched on this a little bit, is the access. So once they've discovered that you have footage that will be a benefit to them, how are they going to view it? Are they going to have to come to your location, or are you going to be able to provide it for them online, either by streaming it freely or through some kind of support, portal with a password or limited time access? So do think about that. Again, be sure it's something that you can support. And then one final kind of general purpose step. Make it easy for them to know how to cite your collection. So we have 3, in several of our websites, in several of our collections are cataloged at the item level, and the top and bottom citations that you see here are for specific items from the news film collection at the top or the Peabody Awards collection at the bottom. And there's a persistent URL for those clips, and we say, cite this as. The one in the middle, we haven't done it at the clip or shot level, but we're saying here's how to cite this collection. We had a symposium of media scholars on campus a couple of years ago that the Peabody Awards brought in, and they were doing research in the collection, and that's leading to the publication of a book. And I had them calling me and asking how to cite this stuff. I mean, they are people who are, that is their main thing. If you're bringing in people from other disciplines that are used to working with print-based archives, this is a strange new world for them. So make it easy for them. Make it sort of familiar to them. Oh yeah, there's a citation. Okay, I know what to do with that. So now I'm going to take you sort of specifically into what we've done at the University of Georgia. So this building here, this is the Richard B. Russell Library, Special Collections Libraries at the University of Georgia, and it's home to our 3 special collections, the Hargett Rare Book and Manuscript Library, the Russell Library for Political Research and Study, and us, Brown Media Archives. And so when this opened on the university's campus in February of 2012, it both literally and figuratively raised our profile. A lot of people who didn't know we were there before knew we were there then. And so it saw a big increase in use of our collections, in part for research, but also really for teaching. A lot of faculty members wanted to use our materials for teaching, which was great, but they didn't necessarily know how to do it well. So it was sucking a lot of our time, but not necessarily leading to good student learning outcomes. So this posed some challenges for us, and to help us address those challenges, to the rescue is teacharchives.org. I have the year here, but this was a result of a 3-year grant-funded project that was done at the Brooklyn Historical Society, and the project was called Students and Faculty in the Archives, and it was led by Julie Golia and Robin Katz, who came to UGA around 2012 and talked about their research and really inspired us. The website has really great resources, and I encourage you all to check it out. Their program was largely working with print-based materials, but it's pretty easy to extrapolate from what they did to work with media to make really meaningful interactions for students using these primary sources. So what we did was propose to the library administration the creation of a faculty learning program that was done in conjunction with UGA Center for Teaching and Learning. So if you are at an academic institution, words like support the teaching mission of the university, and enhance student learning, cognitive outcomes, those are the kind of words that are going to get your administration's attention and get you support. So we were able to attract funding through private donors for this program, but please don't tune me out if you think you can't attract funding from private donors. It was helpful. Felicia was mentioning food. I like food at receptions too. So it helped us have nice receptions, but a lot of what we did, you don't need any money to do. So the approach would work for everybody. So we've had 3 cohorts complete their training, and I'll start meeting with our 4th cohort next Tuesday night. So I'm not going to read this to you. My slides are available online. This goes over some of the goals of the project. So again, it's a collaboration between the 3 special collections libraries. And we're working with faculty, but the goal is to help them create meaningful instruction for students. So we're affecting student learning through working with faculty members. So based on the teacharchives.org model, we take the faculty through a sequence of increasingly more complex learning activities. Those are the ones we want them to do with their students. So the faculty basically do this twice over the course of the semester with us. The first time they're in the role of students, and then the second time as instructors, they're going back through and creating those same kinds of interactions for their students, finding materials in our archives that will work for them. So the idea is to really have them slow down and focus on one object and really mine it for information. And people are not necessarily used to thinking about media in that way. So we chose things that were really going to raise more questions than it was offer answers, and we give them guided prompts that help them reflect. So we really want them to understand this is a primary source, this tells us things, but it's not a complete record. What questions does that raise? And then phase 2 is to help them understand relationships between a series of documents. So we give them a topic, they're each assigned a collection, they find materials on that topic and they have to put them together in an exhibit. And we always, so there, you can see there's a laptop there, that's the media component of this pop-up exhibit. So they brought this together and are finding ways to make connections, the kind of connections they're going to want their students to make. And then finally, this is the phase, and not everyone is going to go to all 3 phases, but this is the really meaty phase where we're preparing them to do their own research or teaching them how to prepare their students to do their own research. And part of that is thinking about archives and archival description, what a finding aid looks like, what the vocabulary is going to be. And so this is the shot log from another collection, the WSB videotape. That really nice search screen I showed you with the facets and all is from the news film. Our second donation, the videotape, this is the metadata we got. So I've got students going through and transcribing this. You can see part of the way down, it says Paul Bush 10. Well, that's politics, George H.W. Bush, and I know it was that Bush because of the time period, and TEN Tennessee. So George H.W. Bush is in Tennessee doing something political. Well, you know, you've got to know what words are likely to have been in the shot log that will lead you to that clip. So thinking about those kinds of things, we review the available databases, we help them craft search assignments, and all of this is getting their students ready to do scholarly research in the archives. But you're not really done at that point. We do continue on. The kinds of ongoing support that are required are really varied. This is probably like at the far end of the spectrum of variability. Dr. Amma, the lady in black in the middle, she's in the drama and theater department, and her specialty is devised theater, and her class performed the archives, and we're working with them. Starting next spring, they're doing a devised theatrical performance about Georgia's carceral history. So all 3 special collections at UGA have information about prisons and prisoners in Georgia, and we're working with students from Spelman. We are working with folks in the English department. We're working with a group of women in prison now who are doing a prison writing program. And so talk about collaboration. This is kind of crazy big and way out of my comfort zone, but it's a lot of fun. So things to think about. Know your collections well. Know what you have. You know, don't bring in a scholar of 18th century physics if you don't have anything about 18th century physics. Develop a plan that you have enough resources to actually implement. Get the support of your administration, because even if they're not giving you money, you will be taking time away from other things to do this. So help them understand why this is important to your mission. Cultivate the rich relationships that you already have. Think out of the box to form new ones. And there is really very little that is more fun than having someone discover a collection that you have processed and cataloged and digitized and preserved and put out there, and then someone comes in and it is the greatest thing ever and they're so happy and they can't believe they found it. That is the magic moment that makes it all worthwhile. So look for those moments. Thank you.
Quick switch.
Good afternoon, everybody. Try to make this short and sweet. Also, I'm the only one on the panel with English not as his first language, so it's an extra extra challenge. Let's see. We tested this in the break, so it's very likely that it won't work now. It's always the case. Actually, my slides are also. Okay. So I tweeted a link to my slides, so at least you don't have to take notes. I'm Johan Oomen. I work at the Netherlands Institute for Sound and Vision, and I would like to share you some insight in working for and with research communities in the scope of two projects, EUscreen and CLARIAH. Sound and Vision is an archive in the middle of the Netherlands. We cater for many different user groups, people that visit our museum, but also media professionals that use our collections for new works. But also from the very beginning, the research community was a major user group for us. So again, two projects, EUscreen and CLARIAH. EUscreen is a European project that brings together archives across the continent, with a focus on media historians. CLARIAH is a project that's of national scope, and the focus is a bit broader. It targets humanities and social sciences. So I hope that some of the learnings in reaching out to these communities will also be helpful for you, as this panel obviously is about regional outreach, but I think it will. I'm pretty confident. But just to sort of as a backdrop, the fact that collections and user groups are now both online opens up lots of opportunity for new research. Asking new questions or asking old questions in new ways. So this image I quite like. It sort of shows that you can look at one. If you translate it to the audiovisual domain, you can look at one video in very much detail. You can look at an entire collection, or you can sort of make analysis of different collections and different that are distributed. So it's like telescope, microscope, and microscope. So what I would like to do is just go through each of the two projects and then highlight how we reach out to users. I have conclusions, and then we can go to the bar. Okay, so that's that's what we're going to do. So EUscreen. So this is what Europe looks like. There is Iceland is behind is somewhere here, and so only this week. We got in touch with the Icelandic Broadcasting Corporation, so next slide will be also Iceland in green. EUscreen has been around for more than 10 years, and so basically what we try to do is bring all these collections together. You can imagine the challenges, making sure that metadata is interoperable, making sure that you can query one in your own language, different languages. These are the logos of some of our partners. You might not recognize too many of them, but I think you do know BBC, Deutsche Welle, ORF. These big broadcasters have joined our initiative and working with some tools that we offer them, making their collections available. We're following a two-tiered approach. One is to gather all metadata and send it to the Europeana website. Europeana is a European initiative that brings together 3,000 museums, libraries, archives, their collections, totaling 53 million objects at the moment. So EUscreen contributes 1 million metadata records. And at the same time, EUscreen also operates a website with 60,000 videos that can be shown directly on that website. Obviously, we would love to show 1 million items, but you can imagine that clearing rights for 1 million items on a public website is quite cumbersome. So I'm just going to show you some screenshots of the EUscreen portal. So euscreen.eu, feel free to visit it. you can make a query. So I search for Eurovision Song Contest, and what you see that there are items from different broadcasters, from BBC, Deutsche Welle, the French INA, NAVA from Hungary, ORF. You can, from Austria. You can look at a video, and you can also look at the extensive metadata description that was made by the archive. In many cases, the metadata description was already there, but it was translated to the metadata schema that we are using. Making citations really easy is something that we would like to do. That's something that we're going to be doing in an ongoing project. So basically, for scholars, it's important to have a persistent identifier and also to link at a specific segment in the video. So one of the things that we established already, I think maybe 4 or 5 years ago, is a journal. Journal, it's called View. It's not the best word. If you Google for View journal, you find like a million hits. But anyway. And the interesting thing is that this is a way to collaborate with researchers. So the researchers will look at the EUscreen collection and contextualize the videos. Also, they have a big say in which videos are uploaded to this collection of 60,000 videos. Here's just an example of an article. We're using the open journal systems, and that's an open source, open access journal platform. So the interesting thing is that you can actually embed video in an article, which was incredibly a big step for media historians a few years ago, strangely enough. So now you can have a video about television history with an embedded clip. Outreach. These are our main stakeholders. This is how I always like to think about outreach activities. So who are the stakeholders? What is their information need? And what is their preferred channel? And if you know these things, then you can make a sort of concrete action plan. It's very simple, but it's very helpful at the same time. So for instance, media historians, we have to make sure that they are aware that there is a research community connected to the EUscreen. So what do? We have a newsletter, conferences, and also the call for proposals for the View journal, something that we use to reach out to them. So for instance, for students, it's different. They need to be aware that there's source material that they can use. But instead of reaching out to students directly, we make sure that the research community knows about the EUscreen and then use in workshops. So this is sort of how we would like to look at outreach. How many minutes do I have left?
Maybe about 12 minutes if we want to go all the way with no Q&A.
12? How many minutes left?
12 till the end of the session altogether.
Oh no, I don't want to take it to the end of the session. No. Okay, so I have like 5. Okay, let's see. So these are some of the researchers that are actually working with us. And so in this case, we held a conference about the events in 1968 in Europe, a very eventful year. So looking at our collection, and these conference papers have been published in the View journal. So, second project, CLARIAH, national project, as I said earlier. CLARIAH is quite broad in scope. It brings together researchers in linguistics, socio-economic, history, and media studies. And obviously, I'm going to talk about the audiovisual part of the project. The idea is to offer an environment for, say, media researchers to query different, say, distributed collections. So not only the Archive of Sound and Vision, but also the Archive of the Film Institute, the collections of newspapers by the Royal Library, and so on. So this is what we've been working on over the past couple of years, and it's now, this summer, it was the first version was launched. So now we actually see the interesting research. You know, after building infrastructure, then the next step obviously is, you know, show me those interesting papers that we were hoping to see. So anyway, the Media Suite of CLARIAH.nl EUscreen is open. For Media Suite, you need to have academic credentials. So, but every, say, student and teacher in the Netherlands has those credentials, and in effect, they can look at the entire digitized archive. In this case, so sound and vision, I think it's over 200,000 hours of material that you can view. So, if you are logged in, you can see the different collections, and you can explore the collections. So this is just simple search. You can see across the catalog the frequency in which programs, in this case programs, are available. Also interesting for researchers is making collections. So as you explore this page, you can bookmark collections and go back to them. And this is just an example of a query where the search query was asked, comparing reviews of films in the collections of the Royal Library and Sound and Vision. So here you can sort of see the distribution over time and the changes over time. So, outreach, again, very interesting that we have sort of two types of researchers. One is about the people that already know about the CLARIAH program, maybe because they have been involved in defining the requirements, or they have been contacted by people that are in the project. But on the other hand, there's a big group of researchers that are not yet in the network. So for them, we have to find different ways to approach them. So for instance, if you're already in the network, then obviously there are meetups. Like today there was a tech meetup I think in Utrecht, and project newsletter. But for the people that are not in the network, we organize a summer school, and we reach out to them on social media. And I would just like to end my talk by showing 2 minutes of people that have been attending the summer school. Gives a nice impression of how media researchers look and what they are doing with our collection. So again, here it worked. The sound worked when I tested it. So
research project, so that's been really nice.
Okay.
We see a lot of potential, really interesting new ways of doing research, new methods, but I think we only scraped the surface so far. So for example, this availability of automated speech recognition, which suddenly makes all of the audiovisual material, which is in the Media Suite, searchable, is an enormously revolutionary development, because previously we were only working with titles and descriptions, which are limited, of course, because it doesn't cover everything that's actually in those programs and in those videos. So that means that, for example, if you look for particular people, right, which are not so well known, but are actually mentioned in the program, you're able to then look for, 50, 60 years of material and suddenly find these people in these programs. So that's an incredibly exciting development.
It raises new questions about the whole history of the collection here at Sound and Vision. So we found that there was a lot more material collected in the 1960s of radio and television than of the 70s and 80s. And these kind of patterns in what is there, what's not there, only now become visible.
Whenever
So if you'd like to see the whole clip, then there's a link in my deck online. So again, another. I'm not going to edit my slides. Let's see. So this is the some pictures of the summer school. So this is where we actually reach out to like a small group of media historians. But we hope that these people will become advocates of the CLARIAH Media Suite. As they learn and use the tools. So, so a few final thoughts. In both cases, both EUscreen and CLARIAH, the researchers were part of the core consortium. So they were also helping to design the environments, doing co-design. And as I said earlier, the multiplier effect, so the fact that we are working already with researchers makes it easier to reach out to more researchers. So we have 5 universities, for instance, in the core consortium of CLARIAH. Say we have 50 people now in doing CLARIAH projects. So the next step would be to have 500 researchers working with the tool over the next couple of years. Yes, and I added this picture of the IDA model. This sort of hints at the fact that some people are already aware of what we're doing, and some of them are not. So you have to sort of tailor your communication plan accordingly. And I would like to leave it there. Many thanks to Liliana, Erwin, and our contributors to these projects.
So thank you all for coming. Like I said, I know everyone is getting ready to go happy hour, but we do have a couple minutes for question if anyone does have any questions for the panelists. Everyone is so amazed, speechless. Okay, so while I'm making a quick plug, think about if you have anything else to say. As part of the News, Television, and Documentary Committee, as part of the Regional Audiovisual Archive Committee, I'm hoping to gather examples of these sorts of innovative outreach projects, as well as examples of how your materials are being used, right? So we can gather a sort of lit review and a compendium of all these things. So if your collections are being used in really great ways by scholars, if you have developed a program that is really great for outreach with scholars, I don't have my slide up because I don't want to switch the machine. You can come up afterwards and talk to me. You can email me at laura.treat@unt.edu. You can tweet it to No Islands, and we would be happy to talk to you about it later. Thanks to everyone who came, and let's go party. All right?